Like, wow, look at these faces just popping up on my screen, especially the one in the bottom middle. I'm ready to go, brother. Ready to go. Now Pat's waving. He's swaying, not waving, swaying. I'm used lost for words here. I'm going the wrong direction. He was
And we're
swaying as we
starting with a
started,
Hell in
people.
the Cell.
Yes, yes. It is October 6th. It is October, people. It's October. It's
Indeed.
Halloween time. The end of the year is almost here. Um, yeah. 2024 will be toodaloos, and we'll be introducing 2025 shortly. Wow. Life goes fast when we get old, especially when
Yeah,
we're middle-aged men. Aha, aha,
indeed.
aha.
I was
Middle-aged and
we
crazy, trying to
celebrated
prove we
son
still
turned
can.
8 on Tuesday, but we celebrated his birthday on yesterday because you know, not that we didn't celebrate it on Tuesday, but we had the everybody over for the a party
Indeed, indeed.
on Saturday, and I forget what brought it up, but my daughter's like, she said something about me being old. I said, I'm old. I'm not old yet. Wait until you guys graduate. I said, you're 2029 and he's 2035. And she's like, 35? I was like, yeah, he's 6 years after you. She's like, oh. My daughter, my teenage daughter is not dumb by any means, but she can never put two and two together. Like, she's slow when it comes to that stuff. Like, but yeah.
It happens. It happens. Yeah, yeah. I mean,
So yeah,
yeah.
as time goes by, it gets closer and closer to my middle child graduating, and that's scary. Very scary.
Mine graduates 2027. Yeah. 2027 will be the year I also turn the good old 50. Joy to my life. Something I'm grandly looking forward to. Yeah. You know, age. It's a beautiful
Mhm.
thing.
So I'll say this as I'm watching the replay because I did not watch this live yesterday.
Oh yes,
The
yes, yes. Me and
replay
Jeremy are
of
watching a replay of Bad Blood because
Bad Blood.
we had other things to do
Extremely
yesterday while
bad
this came on
blood.
at 6 o'clock. So
I must say I like the ring wraps that they have on the ring post today. Like
yes,
these silver, they kind of look like silver columns. Pretty cool. Um, but if you go back to previous episodes when we talked about how they ended the second match between Drew and CM Punk, where that one was CM Punk won, right? It was Drew then CM Punk. So now they're having the rubber match as we like to call it with our old middle-aged men show.
rubber match.
The rubber
Well,
match.
we don't call it that. I mean, other people have called it that first.
Well, I'm just using our age as an example of
He's
what we call a
hence
third match.
saying that your term has been used for quite some time over the decades since it's old like
Saucy
us.
Nugs. Ooh, Wendy's is a sponsor. It's the Saucy Nugs sponsor.
Too bad their sauces
um,
aren't that great.
Nugs. Give me some of those nugs. What kind of
but
nugs do you want?
um, we had mentioned the only way, if they're going to keep this feud going, that means they have to up the ante. And they started with this just regular match, which was good. And then the second match was a four poles
Strap match.
strap match, which made sense. You're up in the ante. And now, okay, it's the rubber match. We're going to go all in. We're doing Hell in the Cell. Makes sense. Like, this is actually a really good storyline. It was a good way to progress the irritation of these two have towards each other, the aggravation, that's a better word, that they have towards each other,
The
and the
hate.
frustrations of each losing a match to one or the other. The, and it makes me wonder, from an input standpoint, did Drew and CM Punk have input into how they want this story to play out in regards to things that in the interactions that happened, the storyline of how the matches have progressed, or was this simply a um,
Booking.
booking thing regards to Triple H in his, because he is the chief content officer. So did he have a bigger say in this, or did he leave it up to writers? Like, I'm interested to know, and I don't think we'll ever know unless somebody actually comes out and talks about it, that who was involved in the overall story process. Was it a combination of all three of them having, input and saying this is it? Because I'll say, for me, this has probably been one of the better storylines that WWE has done in a long time.
My guess would be Drew and Punk had at least some input into this
Hmm.
because Punk probably got certain assurances when he rejoined the company that he could have a certain amount of say in what he would do. And I think Drew he's in the upper echelon of the talent roster, both in terms of, I think, like, quality, character,
Hmm.
longevity, really.
Yeah.
That he's not somebody that you can't trust, in terms of like coming up with ideas or stuff. Like, I'm sure Triple H and the creative team was still the driving force, but again, I'm sure they said, well, it was probably more of a situation too, like, this is what we've got in mind. What do you
Hmm.
guys think? Like, is there anything you want to add? Is there anything you would tweak? And then it was probably some kind of a collaborative effort at it.
Yeah.
Because I think there's like a certain part of the roster, it's like, this is what you're doing. And there's a certain part of the roster that gets the consideration of, you've earned your spot, not my dog spot, not my liver spot. Um, that they can say, this is what, and Triple H probably still has the final say, of course. But again, somebody, of course, had to say, we want blood in this match. And I think that match needed blood. And I'm
Well,
glad
tell him
that,
so. Yeah, yeah.
and I'm glad that they went with blood. When I was on the phone with AJ briefly last
Well, and
evening.
I'm interested to find out if it's a hard way or if it's a cut, because I know the big thing with blood, one of the big reasons they got rid of it is not just because of the blood, it's because of how they were getting themselves bloody. It was more
Well,
about the maiming of themselves that was the
When
bigger issue, not necessarily the blood
when you go
itself.
back and watch the match, you will definitely
Well,
find
yeah, that's
out.
it.
it's all I will say is this. I mean, well, this is going to spoil, but it'll spoil the how, not the what, the what, or more specifically the how much. They were not hard ways. They were definitely blading,
Oh, that's
but
helpful.
there was definitely a difference in how they did.
Yeah, yeah, definitely so. Yeah. Um,
So, but again, I think the match needed blood, and I'm glad that they weren't afraid to shy away from it.
yeah. I think it's a collaboration of both. They're both veterans. They both know how to work a match. Them talking to creative and Triple H, going about what creative and Triple H is thinking, and then both wrestlers putting their input into it and them talking to each other on how they want to do the promos, how they want to do the matches, how they set them up, so on and so on. They're both guys who could be trusted to do the work in the ring and tell the story. So I don't think creative or Triple H really has an issue with either one of them not fulfilling what they're supposed to do compared to someone who's only in the business for maybe 4 or 5 years. So I think it's a collaboration of both, to be honest with you. And this has been the best Drew I've seen since he was in TNA. I know not a lot of people watch TNA anymore, like I do, but even
Yeah, and I didn't see it when Drew was in there.
When Drew
Yeah,
was when Drew
I
was
never
in
saw
there,
Grantine either, but yeah.
when Drew was in here, he and TNA, he really started to do more mic work and be very much more creating his character in regards to that. So he was working. And there was parts in TNA where of course it wasn't great because he's trying some new things you could tell he hasn't done before. But overall, it helped him excel in TNA, hence why WWE brought him back once his TNA contract was done, because they saw the potential in what he did in TNA to improve himself as an overall character. And
Yeah.
yes, Drew's been a little, I've always liked Drew. His WWE run's been, up and down and whatnot, but he's been consistent. And I think this is legitimately this feud with Punk has been the best Drew I've really ever seen in his
Yeah.
career, and I
Yeah, I
enjoy it.
Yeah.
mean, Drew Drew got hamstrung in his first WWE run by being like the Vince, and this isn't like a Vince joke in any way. By being like the Vince anointed kind of chosen one,
Hmm.
like when
The
he first
next
debuted and
thing.
everything, and he like he had an Intercontinental title reign, and then he had a tag team with Cody, which I think a lot of people forget. They won the tag titles together once.
Yep.
But then, of course, he fell down for whatever reason. I don't know who exactly soured on him, whether it was Vince or somebody else on the creative team. And he was stuck in the 3MB gimmick. And as much as I enjoyed 3MB, they were a comedy act. They
Nobody
were
really
they were funny,
enjoyed
entertaining, but they became all, joke jobbers. And it's like, wow, 2 years ago, this guy was like the next big thing. Now he's doing this. So Drew definitely had to, as Bruce Pritchard would say, go away and learn a new hold.
Yep.
That was like the phrase. That's like kind of like an all-purpose phrase Pritchard uses when he talks about guys from back in the day when it was still kind of like there was still like other places to go work.
Yeah.
Like the dying days of the territories, or at least when WCW was still there. Um, and he obviously definitely improved himself. And WWE was like, all right, we think he's taking strides. Let's bring him back. And when they brought him back, they brought him back as like the no nonsense monster heel, and he played that role pretty well for a couple of years. And then
Yep.
the fans started like realizing, oh, he's actually pretty good. And they were
Yeah.
able to do the big face turn with him, the Royal Rumble shit with Brock. And they're like, all right, he's the Royal Rumble winner. We're strapping the rocket to him. COVID.
Yeah. And that's the
Bum
part
bum
that sucked for
bum.
him.
COVID took away his moment, unfortunately, because he was going to be the guy at the end of WrestleMania with the fireworks going off and everything else that year. So,
It pretty
um,
much took away anything from everybody. Just happened to be Drew at that time when he was going to, reach
Drew
the proverbial top of the mountain.
Drew was the
Yeah.
guy who got fucked over by the pandemic most in terms of character on WWE roster. I'm obviously leaving out anything else, especially real life shows COVID there, you know. But yeah, it's like the he definitely became a little stale there as a babyface into last year. So the heel turn was quite necessary. And yeah, the feud with Punk has really been great for both guys, if you ask me,
Hmm.
because they've both been able to get wins, they've both been able to do things. It's the kind of feud where it's been almost like 50-50 booking,
Yeah.
but neither guy suffered from it. For one thing,
Nope.
I think both guys are above the part where 50-50 booking would hurt them. Like they're big enough names that it's like it's not
Correct.
gonna matter. And obviously somebody's got to win the feud, but somebody shouldn't win this feud one-sided either because they're both such big names.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think it's worked out well for both guys. Now, of course, the question is where do they go with both guys from here? Because
And
there's no way they can
I,
continue this feud.
being a fan of both guys, I really didn't care who won the feud. To me, it was
I
a more,
wanted Punk to win the feud just because I felt like if Punk
Well,
didn't win the
tell me who
feud, it would kind of be
wins.
like, so what's
Jeez.
the point of him being there? So I felt like
yeah,
Punk needed to win
yeah,
in that
yeah.
aspect. But again, I'm more kind of curious, but I am more curious now about where they go, but where both guys go from here now, as opposed to um the
Ooh,
impact
nice
of
drop
Punk
toe hold
winning the
into the
feud.
table.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know. For
Like
me,
I could see them doing a Drew Jey Uso feud because Drew still got issues with Jey Uso that
oh
date
yeah,
back
yeah.
to the bloodline stuff.
And since
Um,
Rollins is back, might make sense to bring him back with Punk, maybe. I don't know about the
Rollins
Bronson
still at least
Reed
has to
thing
do
yet, though.
something with Bronson Reed, at least
Yeah,
for a month or so. And let me just say this real quick. I was into that match on Monday night until I saw how they were going to end it.
yeah,
And as soon as I saw how they were going to end it, I just went,
I'm sorry, I can't get in. I can't with Bronson Reed yet. I got to see more of him.
well, that's what the whole thing was. And that's why I was like, Bronson needs to win this match. Because Strowman loses so much that I don't think it matters when he loses.
no.
So I was like, Bronson Reed needs a decisive victory here. But now they decide to do the, oh my God, the ring collapsed spot again. But
So Bronson,
at least Seth showed up at the end and everything. But yeah, so it's like I could see Drew going on a feud with Jey Uso now over the Intercontinental belt. I mean, Punk before Drew attacked him after the strap match had said he wanted a shot at Gunther. I guess I could see them doing that. I don't think Punk should be the guy to beat Gunther.
No,
And of course, AJ not liking Punk at all doesn't want Punk getting a title, which I understand. But I also don't think Punk necessarily needs a title.
not right now.
No.
Like if
Not, I mean, yeah,
he
not right now. It's like
if they do that, that's like a year away or something like that.
well, I can still
Punk
see
just
them
needs to
trying to get to a point where Punk wins the title at WrestleMania in the main event. You know, of night it would be probably night
Right,
one.
because he has
or
not
whatever.
done that yet, if I remember correctly. He has not
Wow.
actually won at
Well,
WrestleMania for the title.
Well, no, he's
He-
never main evented at
He's never
WrestleMania.
won the title at
Even when he
WrestleMania.
had the title, he never main evented at WrestleMania.
Right. His thing isn't about winning the title at WrestleMania, it's about main eventing WrestleMania. That's what
Yeah.
his thing always was.
So far, this match has been pretty decent.
Oh
It's
yeah, yeah.
been a
Finn
Schlobberknocker.
and Damien.
Um,
It's a decent match. It's good. I like the
I
Dragon
like
Ball.
the fact that he tried to impale him with,
I
poke his
know.
eyeball out with the chair table, with the table leg.
Yeah, it's like at some point with matches like this, when they start relying on like the props and everything, you go, "Oh my god, what are we going to see that we haven't seen before?" And it's like, well, I don't really specifically remember that. You know,
No,
like
yeah,
kind of
yeah,
like
they-
put I'm going to poke your eye out with the table leg. You know,
They do a couple things different or do a couple things that are new in that match for sure, for sure. For me,
I thought he was going to accidentally impale him when he took the broken table leg and went to slam it down and like choke it. I was like, oh my god, he's gonna actually accidentally, because like the point part is like right in the middle of that piece, and I'm like, please don't accidentally like jab this through his eye and kill him in the ring. Like
I know.
I thought that's what was gonna happen, and he was, under control enough that it went to the side of his head and like it looked
Yeah.
like he was choking him. I was like, ooh, whew.
well, something tells me that they probably at least went over that spot to some extent.
You would hope
I'm
so.
just saying, anything that
I
would
gotta rewind it
involve
here.
a prop that could accidentally cause real damage, I'm sure they at least would have like walked through just so they knew what they both needed to do, where they needed to be, that kind of stuff. I hope.
Like I was saying, for me, it didn't really matter who won the feud per se. It's just the storyline for where both guys were going afterwards. Of course, I'm more of a Punk fan than a Drew fan, so I would tend to want Punk to win that feud, of course. But if he didn't, I wasn't gonna be heartbroken over it. Just as long as the whatever story they were going to afterwards made sense. That's kind of what I'm more worried about sometimes anymore. Because
Yeah,
storylines don't really go the way you think or the way they should, and shit happens and gets twisted around sideways and shoved up your candy ass. But stuff like that happens.
So his blood definitely looks a lot more natural as far as like where the cut is, because it's like cut right here.
You
And kinda
talking
like
about Punks?
Yeah,
Yeah.
based on
Wait
how
till-
he flew into the cage.
Wait till you see when Drew really gets cut open. Oh boy.
Because right now Drew's got like a nugget forming on his head where Punk hit him with his fist to try and.
Listen,
So-
you're gonna think Drew's wearing a cane mask. Like seriously. This Damian Priest Finn Balor match is not too bad.
I don't
So-
think I ended up seeing any of that match because
mean,
by that point I was focused on the Yankees game.
Oh, yeah. Which, thank you, one of you, and boo-hoo to the other one.
Hey, don't blame me. I don't play for the fucking team.
Hey, and you
I'm just a fan.
you can't blame all of Jeremy either, because his starting pitcher was
Phenomenal. Wheeler kicked ass. And then the bullpen came in, and I'm like, well, there goes one of my parlays. Son of a bitch. And I'm like, I need the Yankees to redeem me, because if not, I'm not picking any of these two jabroni teams for the rest of the playoffs.
the bullpen
No
pulled
bueno.
off a hold my beer of spectacular failure.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and that's still a weak point of the Phillies. Like their bullpen has been more consistent. I don't think it's been spectacular, but they've come in a lot of times this year. From what I've seen, they haven't come in a tight game. Like I don't want to. I shouldn't say they haven't come. They haven't come into times where like I don't know the score of yesterday's game, but they haven't been coming in and giving up giant leads on a consistent basis. Most of the games haven't been like that. Where last year they were giving up big lead after big lead, when the bullpen came in. So they've been consistent in not giving up lots and lots of runs, but evidently that was not the case yesterday.
Yeah, I was
No.
going to say they didn't give up a big lead. It's just that they gave up a lead late in the game, and they did give up a lot of runs.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
So,
6.
but it is the playoffs because we are in October.
October.
Yeah, I mean
So I'm
it
not
was one
surprised that the bullpen would like fail
it was one
at
it
the
was
perfect
one
timing.
nothing, it was 1-0 Phillies going into the top of the eighth, and they gave up 5 runs.
Yeah, that
And then
sounds about
and then one
par for
more
the
in the
course.
ninth. But
Who was the relief pitcher to start the eighth?
let me find the play-by-play here real quick.
Oh,
Because I can
Damien.
probably, if
Oh,
you tell me the name, I'll probably be like, man, I'm not surprised by that.
So let's see. Top of the eighth, Wheeler
No.
departed. Hoffman came in.
I don't feel like Hoffman's very inconsistent. I don't feel like he normally does that.
He gave up a single. He gave up a single to Alvarez. He walked Lindor, and then he gave up a single to Vientos, which scored Bader, who pinch ran for Alvarez. That tied the game at 1. Then they took Hoffman out and brought Strom in. He gave up a single to Nimmo, which scored Lindor, a sacrifice fly to Alonso, which scored Vientos, a single to Iglesias. Then they took Strom out and brought Kirkering in. I'm not sure if I have that
Oh
pronunciation
my
right, or if it's
God, not
Kirkering or
Kirkering.
something like that. He then gave up a single to Martinez, who pinch hit for Winker, which scored Nimmo, and then a sacrifice fly to Marte, which scored Iglesias, and then it was 5-1.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it was like
the
all
second
singles too.
two.
It was just hit, sack fly, hit, sack fly, where there's one walk in there. So it wasn't
Yeah,
like anybody gave up like a bomb, but it's just they just couldn't get the outs.
yeah.
Yeah.
So the first reliever that you mentioned, um, that was
Hoffman.
Hoffman, and like I said, from what I've seen this year, which is not a lot, um, he's not normally a guy that gives up. It's the next two that you mentioned, like those two are the more inconsistent ones.
Well, here's the thing. Hoffman had a 2.17 ERA in 68 games this year. Strom had a 1.87 ERA in 66 games, and Kirkering had a 2.29 ERA in 64 games. So all of them were pretty good, during the season. Like they all had whips of, well, 2 of them had whips of under 1. One wasn't much above 1, and they all had good strikeout numbers too. So honestly, it's like all things considered, what their track records for the year were, bringing them into that situation. No, you wouldn't have expected them to not just be able to get anybody out. So, but like John Sterling always says, you can't predict baseball.
Yes.
No.
So we'll see what happens. This is a 5-game series, right? The first series is always a 5-game series.
Yeah, it's a 5-game
Best-
series, and
best of
obviously
3.
the next 2 games after today will be played at Citi Field. So it's not necessarily right to start calling every playoff game a must win, because like I was trying to tell my Yankee fan friends yesterday, I felt like last night's game for the Yankees was a must win because of the fact that it's a 5-game series. You don't want to lose home field advantage. The Yankees had their best starting pitcher starting against the Royals, not best starting pitcher, because Waka wasn't the Royals' best starting pitcher. He was their 3rd best starting pitcher. So I'm like, just because of the matchups and everything, the way they've worked out, like, like I feel like it's a must win for the Yankees, blah, blah, blah. For the Phillies today, I feel like it probably is a must win because you don't want to go to Citi Field down 2-0 where you have to win both games.
Yeah, and they're playing. Who are they playing?
The Mets.
The Mets.
Yes. The stem, as my dad likes to call them still.
That's why my wife's family.
Uh-oh. Family rant coming.
Love them, but I hate them for their sports. They like they like the worst teams. They are Mets and Giants fans.
I hate the people who have like that combination. It's supposed, the combination is supposed to be Yankees, Giants, Mets, Jets. You're not supposed to be allowed to cross over.
So yeah, so
Typical New
she's
Yorker bullshit.
very much rooting for the Mets
I
because she
mean,
is a Mets fan and her son's a Mets fan.
the only thing worse than people who cross over that Yankees, Giants, Mets, Jets thing are people who like both the Cubs and the White Sox.
No, the New York thing is way worse than anything the Cubs White Sox. All right.
No, it's not. No, it's not. Yankees and Giants were there first. Mets and Jets came later. They're expansion teams. They don't count.
Hence why the
They
New
weren't around till the
Yorkers
60s.
started all that ridiculousness.
The
Hence
Mets were created
why.
literally just to the Mets were created literally just to replace the Giants and the Dodgers because they both moved to California. It's why the Mets colors are blue and orange. It's because they combined the primary colors of the Dodgers and the Giants. And that's what they came up with. That's why the Mets are bullshit.
And no offense, the Mets are not really the Mets; they're the Metropolitans. So we got to start calling them by their right name.
You know, I don't know that that's actually true.
Anywho, New Yorkers started the
Shut up.
fuse between your professional sports teams, and you can't root for this one if you root for that one. Blah 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 blah.
It's just one of those things. Yeah, and you were right, Joe.
Oh,
His mask is quite beautiful.
Yeah. So Punk basically stops bleeding by the end of the match. So he didn't blade very deeply. Drew bladed a gusher.
yes, he did.
You could have packaged that shit up and sold them as gushers.
Oh,
And he did it-
oh.
and
If
you
you
can
like,
see
you know,
the
like
rep-
to eat or
if you're-
drink blood, which if you do, you are a sick freak.
Oh, so Triple H is on right now with the crown jewel thing. Is this he announces this on the actual PLE with this wonderful belt he has in a thing.
Okay,
yeah,
so the
it looks like
the-
Drew did it along the hairline, which is always,
Well, that's what you're kind of supposed to do it, but yeah, I mean, okay, so the official name, official corporate name is the New York Metropolitan Baseball Club Inc. So Mets Mets as a nickname. Well, yeah, because it's incorporated. Mets as a nickname was obviously just a shorten of that, and it says it harkens back to the Metropolitans, a New York team in the American Association from 1880 to 1887, and its brevity was advantageous for newspaper headlines. Trust me, if they had actually been called the New York Metropolitans, like officially, it would have always been shortened to Mets in newspaper headlines. Everybody would have just started calling them the Mets anyway.
I know.
It's the same way that they
I'm
abbreviate.
going to start calling them
Yankees as-
Metropolitans just to anger Mets fans.
Yeah. Well, hey, that's fine. That's fine. You want to do that?
Oh
go
my
ahead.
I'm a
God,
Mets
this,
fan. So you're a Metropolitans fan? No, it's the
this
Metropolitans.
belt
Get
is
it right.
hideous.
I mean, it's like when they abbreviate. They still oftentimes in like newspaper headlines, especially obviously in the New York papers, they'll still abbreviate Yankees as Yanks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the Yanks. Like,
Which is
listen,
funny
I'm not
then,
from the
too.
South. I don't call people the Yanks, all right? Yanks.
Yeah.
This
Well, that's also
listen,
funny because I think I remember several months ago when we were going over all like the defunct football teams that once existed. There was the team that was called. They were just called like the NY Yanks that briefly
Yeah.
existed in the NFL. So they
this
weren't called
belt
the
is
Yankees. They were
gaudy.
called the Yanks. You know. And it's funny. The more you say Yanks in quick succession, the more you start thinking you're not talking about sports.
Yes. You know what was really funny? Like since we have these internet channels that are on, on TVs now,
Uh-huh.
because TVs are a little bit different. They have, Wi-Fi and stuff available. There's this one I turned on this one channel. It's called the National Lampoon Channel, and it, it's just a comedy channel, but occasionally it plays Crank Yankers, which I forgot that show existed until I saw it again. I was like,
Yep.
I'm like, oh yeah, this was mildly entertaining with some of the things that they did. But my wife, of course, she had walked in, and I play that channel in the background. I don't necessarily always watch it, but she's like, "What the hell is this?" Because Crank Yankers, for those that don't know, was a skit show that they did where they did prank calls to these different businesses and stuff like that. But the characters were represented on TV as puppets. And one of them, which would not be politically correct anymore, was a character named Special Ed.
Oh no, you wouldn't be.
Let me just say that that character wasn't politically correct then either.
Well, wasn't politically correct, but people at least would laugh at that kind of stuff. People would not laugh at that kind of thing anymore. They'd be like, "This is terrible." And yeah, you're right. It is terrible in a sense, but it's also okay to laugh at things that are actually funny, and it was funny. So, but yes, you know what was sad yesterday is I was goofing around. I was making fun of, picking on my daughter a little bit, my oldest daughter. That was a pretty cool spot.
as
Like
as
some through the
one
table on the side.
as one is supposed to do to your children once they, reach legal age and everything.
Yes. So she was telling us this story how she went out with her friend. They were supposed to go to this broke teachers show. It's like a podcast with these not retired teachers, but used to be teachers, and they now they have this podcast that they do live sometimes, and the show got delayed and things like that. And she's like, yeah, I didn't expect to be out until almost 9 o'clock. And I said, oh yeah, she had to get home and watch Matlock. Now at one point in time people would have understood that joke like you guys do. Yeah, everybody in my household at that time just looked at me like, what the hell are you talking about? I'm like, Matlock, the old people show that used to be on. And then of course my mom's like, but Matlock's coming back. I'm like, what? Like evidently Matlock's been
It
re-released
is.
with Catherine Bates. Is
Yes.
so because I made the Matlock joke and is reappeared, they were all confused. I'm like, why does this joke all of a sudden not ring true just because a show got re-released? Like Matlock was still an old people show with freaking shit. I can't think of his name now.
Andy
They make
Griffith.
reference to that in like
Yeah.
one of the trailers I saw for the show. They make reference to that like in the show itself.
Like so it's just like am I really that old, or are people just really that out of touch anymore? Or maybe I'm just out of touch. I don't know, but it was very disappointing to see nobody like laugh or get the joke. You guys got it, so it makes me feel redeemed a little bit. So,
Well, yeah. It's just that the culture changes, time passes, stuff that were essentially memes in the era of let me just call it pre-memes, because obviously memes didn't exist then. But it would have been a meme then. I mean, essentially it is. It's just you don't see it in like print form.
yes.
Stuff like that just changes, and it's like younger people don't hear anything about everything, right?
Oh, here comes Goldberg.
So
Fantastic.
a couple of years ago on Hell's Kitchen, he did a season that was subtitled Young Guns, and what that meant was that every contestant that year was between ages like 21 and 25, I think. Okay.
Ugh. That's gonna
Well,
be
that
bad.
that was my that was my first reaction too, because I think that season aired the year I turned 40. I want to say that was 3 years ago now, maybe only two. I don't remember. It doesn't matter. Uh, so at one point, he made during one of the dinner services when the chefs were struggling. And I think like two of them who were supposed to be on the same station or were supposed to be working in conjunction with each other to get like a dish out were both screwing up, and Ramsay referred to them as Laurel and Hardy.
Oh my god, they had no idea what he was talking about.
Cut to
No,
cut
they
to like
didn't.
cut to like the confessional, and the one contestant was being yelled at was like, "Who's Laurel and Hardy?" And me being me, immediately went. Now, obviously, Laurel and Hardy were way before my time too. They were most prominent in the 30s and 40s and everything, and
Yes.
they've both been dead for many years, of course.
They did skit comedy before skit comedy was a real thing.
Pretty much, pretty much. Most of their stuff was essentially just like extended like sketches. Like they had the very famous short film where they're trying to get the piano up the huge flight of stairs and everything. Um, but to me, Laurel and Hardy was always on in my house at Christmas time because it was originally titled Babes in Toyland, and it's sometimes now more commonly known as March of the Wooden Soldiers. It was like their big movie from like the 30s
Yeah.
that's at Christmas time and everything. That movie is always on in my house every Christmas. My parents would always have that on at least once. Like if they saw it on TV, they would put it on. So that's how I knew who Laurel and Hardy was, and I'll always know who Laurel and Hardy is. I've seen enough of their other movies now too. So it's like even though I'm not of that age group when Laurel and Hardy were prominent, because anybody was is got to be very old or at this point to from when Laurel Hardy was in their heyday, because like I said, it was that long ago. But it's like so when that guy goes, "Who's Laurel and Hardy?" I just go, "Oh God damn it!" But I'm more mad at that guy's parents than him because his parents should be only slightly older than me, right? So it's like, did you never watch March of the Wooden Soldiers at Christmas time? God damn it! So I'm just kind of like, oh, times change, I guess. All these kids today are going to be talking to me about Ariana Grande and Taylor Swift and all these rappers with these completely fucking made up fake names. Like this thing I saw on Facebook the other day about the worst rappers, and I looked at the list to see how many names I recognized, and it was like maybe 5 out of 50. But most all of them, I said that can't be an actual rapper with like some of the ridiculousness of the names and everything. But yeah, unfortunately, as you get older, the culture changes, and what was hip when you were a kid, when you were in your 20s, ain't hip anymore.
In my eyes, it still
Yeah.
is.
But I will still make fun of people for I'm like, you couldn't have like cracked open a book. I mean, or you're on your goddamn phone all day. You couldn't like when my
What?
sister asked me, because Chris Christopherson passed away last weekend. And when she posted on Facebook about it, and one of her friends replied back to her with a line, and she didn't know what the line meant.
Oh,
Maybe
Dom
that
does it,
she was
Eddie.
being, she thought maybe she was being made fun of. So she like screenshotted it and sent it to me and said, "What does this mean?" And I was like, "I think I know what that is, but I'm not 100% sure. Let me Google it real quick." And as
What
I'm
was it?
Googling it to look it up, I went, "Wait a minute. Why the fuck am I Googling this for you when you can do it yourself?"
And what was the saying or thing? I think.
If you ever saw the movie Convoy, which Chris Christopherson starred in, it was like a thing where the guy was basically saying like 10-4 rubber ducky or something like that. Because that was like his like call handle in that movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, but I'm just like I just explained to her, I said it's a reference to the movie Convoy that he starred in, which was also parodied in Austin Powers 3.
Yes.
And then she's like, "Well, I never watched the third Austin Powers because Beyonce was in it." And I just went, "Oh,
Well,
fuck."
that's a terrible reason to not watch it.
Yes, it
Yeah.
was. Like I wasn't happy that Beyonce was in it when that movie first came out in 2002, but I still fucking watched it.
Yeah, it
That
was
that movie, when I walked into the theater to see that movie, Austin Powers 3 in 2002, I was 21 and I went with my younger sister. And as we sat down in the theater, I started looking around. I was like,
You're the only guy?
"Meg,
so.
Meg, I think I'm the oldest person here." I seriously
So.
saw nothing but teenagers in that theater that day.
Oh.
Uh-oh, Jeremy just had a visceral reaction to something he saw.
Ugh. Drew just took the steel steps to the spine of his back when he did a claymore.
Oh,
Like,
when
Yeah, that
Punk
didn't
moved
look
out of the
fun.
way?
that
Yeah,
looks
that
horribly
spot looked
painful.
yeah, that spot looked hard. I was like, oh shit.
um.
So Dominic comes out with Liv in a Eddie Guerrero-esque moment in the lowrider.
I kind of saw that pre-tape promo and I was like, more with this. It's getting a
Um.
little overboard to me with the Eddie's my real dad stuff.
I know.
I feel like at this point it's almost being disrespectful. So
Yes, I will agree with that. Yeah.
So, oh,
Vicky
speaking
must
of
be okay with it though,
Beyonce.
since she was on camera at a WWE show. What was it, a few weeks back?
So, speaking of Beyonce, um, in things that she might be involved in, don't know if she's really involved in, and I'm not going to speculate. We're not going to really go into that kind of stuff, but
LeBron. Okay,
I
go
find
ahead.
I find it I find it very funny that the internet is slewed with all kinds of interesting facts about Diddy now, and people are not calling him Diddy; they're calling him the Diddler.
Yo, the memes for him are hilarious.
Well, I mean, that's perfectly fine with me.
I know it is perfectly fine with me. I find it absolutely hilarious. Like
The diddler.
when they're like
Oh
they're
shit.
doing a thing and they're calling him the Diddler, and people put up memes like putting him in the Riddler like outfit and calling the Diddler. Somebody did movie titles. Like there was a thing where people put out a whole bunch of movie titles uh, one was Batman and the Diddler.
I've seen some of those.
This is the
I forget
kind of
what's
people that even I cannot protect Gotham from.
I wish I could find it, but yeah, there was a whole bunch of. Let me see. Let me look something up right here now.
I'm sorry. Let me do that again.
This is an evil that even I can't protect Gotham from fully.
I still can't do it as well as Bale did. I don't want to completely destroy my throat doing that voice. If I'm going to completely destroy my throat doing a voice, it's going to be doing the Dr. Claw voice. So
Next time, Gadget. Next time.
I There was a couple memes too with like Diddy and R. Kelly that they put like some movie posters where there was like movies of like duos. One of them, the Jackie Chan and Chris Rock. What was that movie called?
Rush Hour.
Yes, and they like imposed those two on like some Rush Hour posters, and they like changed the names of the fucking movie. It's hilarious. Oh man, some of the stuff. Listen, he has zero bail, man. So whatever they got on him is pretty damn legit. Because if
It's
you are
yeah.
not able to post bail at all, yeah, there's a reason. I mean, I've
Oh
already
yeah, it's
seen
bad.
like, listen, like we said, not speculating, but I've seen where there's been a list put out of all the people who've gone to a Diddy party. Now, with that being said, you know, Diddy might have thrown legitimate parties, but you don't know some of those legitimate parties when some of those celebrities leave, the after parties started. So, and that's where the freak offs probably took place for some of them. But yeah, I mean it's going to be one of those things. Well, it's a wait and see. I've seen way too much conspiracy theory shit on that too, like on the internet, and it's kind of one of those things
Yep.
where you know, you can read it all you want, but please don't buy into all that stuff until legitimate facts come out because we know how the internet rolls. Lies upon click, click, click. So it's just one of those things. And I'm very interested that they're actually going to put Dominic in a cage and raise him up. I think that's interesting.
One of the good old shark cages. Yep.
Yeah.
They've done this gimmick to plenty of people over the years. Usually, managers, guys like Jim Cornette or Bobby Heenan or um, remember they did one several years ago with Enzo in the cage for some reason. Oh, they did it. They did it with Paul Bearer, one of the Undertaker Mankind matches. I think the one at Survivor Series
Who yeah, I think that was.
'96. But yeah, as far as the all the Diddy stuff with like all these people attended Diddy parties. Like a friend of mine on Facebook posted some guy who he basically just said is an outright right wing troll because he posted like a list of politicians who attended like Diddy parties and it was all Democratic politicians. And I'm like, I'm sure they were the only ones.
Yeah, yeah, that's the other thing too. Like I've been
Especially
seeing.
because he said he offered the list up without judgment. It's like bull fucking shit. If you're
Yeah,
only citing one side, there's no way you are. So yeah, fuck out of here.
yeah, that's the other aspect too. I've seen some political views on this, and I'm like, all right, people, come on. Once again, the clickbait, to try to diminish one side or the other, because God knows we can't have any type of civilization of normalcy with certain things. But
Yep.
nonetheless, yeah. Oh, let's see how this women's world champ. Oh, so I did see AJ mentioned something about one of the women's matches. Was that the Nia Bailey match with the botches, or is it this match?
No, he said it was the Nia Bailey
Okay.
match, and
That's what I figured because I did see a couple things. That match was okay. I definitely saw some things that didn't go well. So I didn't know if he was referencing that one or this one. This one there really shouldn't be much of any, but I mean I
yeah, I
understand the
mean,
Nia match because it's
yeah, I was gonna say that's the thing. It's like if it's a Nia match, I pretty much expect
I expect one or
I
two.
pretty much expect sloppiness. So
Yeah, yeah. I mean it's unfortunate.
Well, that's unfortunate. I cannot find the one the one that I saw the other day, which just had like a ton of them.
Oh, that was a good spot per se with those two outside. Okay.
But one of them was Diddy Diddy Bang Bang.
Oh my god.
That much I can tell you.
I mean, I want to laugh at that, but I also don't want to laugh at that. So
It's hard not to.
I know that. I mean, I know it's hard not to, but
Because you
like,
enjoyed the original movie, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. And you're like, I
no,
can't put it past.
the movie. If you've ever seen the Chitty
Oh.
Chitty Bang Bang movie with Dick Van Dyke, you would think it was one of those Disney movies at the time, but it wasn't. It wasn't made by
No, it was not a
Disney.
Disney movie.
But Dick Van Dyke,
Disney-esque.
Dick Van Dyke, who had of course done a few Disney movies at that point, said, I don't think he meant this derisively. I think he just meant in terms of like what they were going for with like the scale, or you might say, to be a little more critical of the bombast of it. He said they were trying to out Disney.
Yeah, because he was in Mary Poppins.
He was in Mary Poppins. He was in
Bedknobs and Broomsticks?
no,
that
he wasn't in
another one of
Bedknobs
his?
and Broomsticks. The guy who played the father in Mary Poppins, David
Was in
Tomlinson, he was in Bedknobs and Broomsticks.
And that was a Disney movie, if I remember correctly.
Yes, it was.
Bedknobs and
Yes, it
Broomsticks.
was.
And those were, and see, and that's the thing, like Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, Mary Poppins, and Bedknobs and Broomsticks, if I remember correctly, were all around that same time frame.
Mary Poppins was 1964. Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, it was either 1967 or 1968. Let me look this up real quick. Bedknobs and Broomsticks was like 1971. Chitty Chitty Bang Bang was 1968.
Okay.
And yes, Bedknobs and Broomsticks was 1971. But that was it was in a general time period though, where they were, and of course Walt Disney died in 1966, but a lot of these movies were like put into like reproduction while he was still alive. Like I think Bedknobs and Broomsticks may have been. Obviously Mary Poppins was completed while he was still alive. But there was a lot of other movies they were doing around that general time frame, like The Love Bug.
Yes, Herbie the Love Bug, yeah.
Herbie, I loved Herbie the Love Bug movies.
The
They're fun looking.
the original Absent-Minded Professor, which the remake was just called Flubber. The Shaggy Dog, a few others. TCM, Turner Classic Movies, they did a pretty good documentary special about the live action Disney movies several years ago. Because obviously everybody knows the animated Disney movies. They're like, well, let's do a documentary and talk about the live action movies. And I think Angela Lansbury narrated it, which was great since she did a lot of Disney stuff too. But she basically described it as like, they kind of created with a lot of those live action movies during those times a new concept, which was the live action cartoon. Because a lot of those movies were so effects driven in various ways.
Yes.
And a lot of times to cartoonish effect. Like if you ever watch the original Absent-Minded Professor, to see the way the guys are, when they're playing basketball, they're being like, obviously pulled up on strings and shit, but, jumping like, 20 feet in the air all of a sudden. And a lot of those movies, of course, were also had like hybrid moments where they had actual animated sequences. Mary Poppins did, Bedknobs and Broomsticks did. So
Yeah.
it's a very interesting, thing. But yeah, it's like that was like a concept that again that Disney more or less created. Nobody else really did stuff like that. So again, it just kind of shows you how he was always coming up with
And
different
look at, they
ideas
were
and
very
models.
original. They didn't have to go back and remake stuff that they already had made.
Well, let's see. They definitely remade the Absent-Minded Professor, as I said. They've remade the Shaggy Dog. Mary
Poppins to
wasn't
extent.
remade. They
More of a
did
sequel.
like a sequel essentially, just many years later. Many years later. And they also, of course, did the movie about the making of Mary Poppins, where Tom Hanks played Walt Disney. So yeah. But yeah, unfortunately, what doesn't get remade or franchised these days?
Now we have horror Disney films.
Those are the worst things ever.
Well,
We talked about that last episode, though, but yeah.
well, again,
Winnie the Pooh,
let's
the
be fair.
Massacre.
Disney itself has nothing to do with those movies.
Right.
Yeah, no, definitely
Yes.
not.
I mean, shit,
John.
Disney's bad enough for their own problems now to have to worry about that shit.
Dom is so funny up there in the cage. Like he's like holding on for dear life. He looks like he's about to cry.
Well, didn't they handcuff him to it?
No, no.
Oh, because I thought I saw some of him like being like shackled to it or something. Maybe I missed it because I only saw like the very end of that match.
The only thing I'm sad about with the whole Dom and thing is that Liv Morgan, like, in order to keep her relevant, they had to put her with Dom and make her kind of crazy.
Well, they were starting to do that before they did the whole thing. The whole Liv Morgan revenge tour thing, just on its surface, is crazy. So
So, oh man, be interested to see what matches next.
after the Liv Dom match, I'm pretty
No,
sure
no,
the
after the Hell in the Cell.
they do the Nia Bailey match after that.
Oh, okay. Oh man. So yes, it's gonna be interesting. I'm glad the Eagles have a bye this week. Goodness gracious, falling apart
Are
at the
you
seams
sure
because they
you
lost.
don't want Sirianni fired?
I don't. It's so. Here's my thing. Here's my take on the whole Eagles problem. Okay, they lost AJ Brown, and when AJ Brown went down, all of a sudden the Eagles don't know how to win. And I don't necessarily blame that on Nick Sirianni. Nick Sirianni, along with the offensive coordinator, come up with a game plan, just like they do just with the defensive coordinator. They work as a team to come up with a game plan. Ultimately, is Nick Sirianni calling the offensive plays? As far as I know, no. That's what his offensive coordinator does. He calls the plays. Now, does Nick Sirianni, can he audible off those? I'm sure he can. Um, my biggest problem is with Jalen Hurts. If you watch the games, Jalen Hurts throws to AJ Brown a shit ton. That is his first read always, and it seems like it's his only read a lot of times. And I feel like it's gotten progressively more like that the longer AJ Brown has been there, because it's the one person that he can throw to that he feels like he has absolute confidence in that it won't get intercepted, and there's a higher chance that AJ Brown will catch it. That's great. Glad he has confidence in that one player. But if you notice, the numbers for everybody, like I'm saying, the numbers for everybody else have gone down. Dallas Goedert finally had a breakout game. He used to get targeted a ton, but now he hardly gets any targets. Like his targets are very minimal. Same with all the other receivers. It's one of those things where I think it is more of a Jalen Hurts problem. He doesn't. I don't know if it's he doesn't know how to make a read, or if he doesn't have confidence throwing into the rest of his receivers because AJ Brown's his man. You know, so I don't blame it entirely on Nick Sirianni and the offensive coordinator with what they have going on. I think it's more. I feel like more of the blame is on the guys on the field, specifically Jalen Hurts, with not being able to make the proper reads. And why, if you have Saquon Barkley in the back and Saquon Barkley's going off with his carries, why would you not give it to him more consistently and allow him to carry a heavier load?
Yeah. Agreed.
So
Well, that's on coaching in some level, and it's
yes,
a matter
that is on coaching, because that's you
a matter
saying,
of
okay,
who.
yeah, that's a matter of coaching, and that's been a problem with the Eagles coaching for a long time now. And it's not just been a Nick Sirianni head coaching thing. It was when Doug was there too. They would do good with the running, and then all of a sudden they go away with it, and it seemed like the running game they didn't even have a back on their team anymore. And that would happen every game. Oh, run, 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 and then okay, we don't run anymore because we don't care about that. So yeah, that's my take.
Okay, I still say fire. He's too arrogant to be an NFL head coach. I mean, it's like I know that sounds a little weird because I think you have to be a little bit to be an NFL head coach.
Yes.
But he's the only NFL head coach to this day that I've ever seen mug for the camera.
Yeah, he's very animated in regards to being a head coach as far as like his enthusiasm and the way he reacts and things like that to calls. Like he's at a different mindset. Like he coaches the game, he reacts like he's a player to things, which is
Oh,
very uncommon for head coaches in the NFL.
Pat, he might be he he might oh maybe not. I can't tell. Now the cage door is open and Dominic's looking out.
You're
It
confusing
kind
our fans. Sounded like you were going to talk about Nick Sirianni, and now you're talking about wrestling.
I know
Back to
'cause
wrestling, folks.
something changed. My bad.
I was waiting for your hot take on Nick Sirianni.
I don't actually have one on him, to be honest with you.
Oh, so speaking of football,
Oh,
he is a
he
character.
is. Okay. Hold up. Wait a minute. He,
back to wrestling.
yes, he is. He was hooked to his leg because
Yeah.
he just went out of the cage and fell out and he's hanging upside down
Yeah,
by the
that's why I'm
cage.
like, so that was the whole
I
thing.
didn't
It's like,
I didn't see them put the strap on his ankle, so I missed
right.
that
I
part.
didn't see the beginning of the match, so I didn't see them hook him up. But I was
But
like,
I
yeah, like when I saw at the end, like, he's out, and obviously we're spoiling this for you, Jeremy, but he's out at the end and he's like dangling from it. I'm like, well, obviously he's got to be attached because like that was the whole thing. Even though he was like elevated, and they didn't have him elevated above the ring, which I actually like because the cliche is that whenever you do that whole like, oh, he's gonna be suspended in a cage above the ring, he'll still find a way to interfere. Like he'll drop something down to who the person he's supporting or whatever. So it's like if you don't have him above the ring, he can't really do that. But like as soon as he got the cage door open, however he did that, I was like, yeah, it won't be the easiest fall, but he can do it and survive. He's a trained pro and blah blah blah. So I'm like, why isn't he doing it? And then when he falls out and he's dangling by his leg, and I'm like, oh, that's why he couldn't do it.
I didn't see them put the thing around his ankle. Plus, they could have done it, you know, when they went camera went back to the ring when Rhea had the mic on her phone saying, Dominic was scared of heights and raise them up, boys. So, yeah, okay. My bad. Back to football.
Yeah. So tell me.
My bad, dog.
My bad.
So once again, fantasy football.
Your nephew trying to make a trade with me the other day, and I'm like,
So I get people want to trade, but if you're going to trade me somebody, if you want somebody from my team, you have to give me something that I don't have or that I need. You cannot give me like like my team is decimated right now. I have 2 guys on the F and IR, and I had 3 guys out last game because they were injured. I'm
Yeah.
like, what in the hell? Like 5 guys out on my team. Like, what the hell is this?
it was
Like,
a
what the
bad
hell
week.
team am I?
Well, it sounds like you were a well-fed team if you had 5 guys on your team.
So I get these trade offers, and they want to take one of the few guys that's still on the field and give me guys that I don't need. Like, I didn't need receivers. Like, why are you offering me receivers? I need running backs.
Excuse me.
And you want to take one of my running backs.
You are, of course, articulating one of the many reasons that I stopped doing fantasy football. The main reason was it just became too much of an effort to know who was doing good or who was this or who the new breakout players were. And I just, my interest had changed where I just didn't have the interest in following that shit as much as I used to. But the other one was, the ridiculous ass trade offers you would get. Now, because here's the problem.
Pat, in the league me and Jeremy in, we get a shit ton of them. A ton.
What
they
I think a lot of
always
people
suck.
who do fantasy football don't understand, and I don't know why they don't because they play under the same fucking rules, is that you can't you have a set roster size. You can't go over a certain number of players on your roster.
Right.
So what good is you offering me 3 players for my 1 player
Because you got to drop people.
when I'm going to have to drop 2 people?
Yep. And I
So
think that's the purpose why some people do that shit. So you'll drop them and then they have an interest to see who you drop and then they try to pick them up.
so unless you're going to offer me 3 players, 2 of whom were like let's just assume in this scenario, even though it's not perfect, that one of the players you're offering me plays the same position as the player you want from me. The guy you're offering doesn't have to be better than the guy you want from me. But if he's not, then the other 2 players that you're offering me better be guys I determine to be better than players I already have at whatever positions those players play. Because if they're not, I'm going to reject that trade proposal before I finish reading it.
Yeah. So one of the trade proposals I got, because one of my quarterbacks is on
Oh,
injury
now I
reserve,
see
and I'm
it.
sure he's
Okay.
not coming back because it was Tua. Tua
I
will
mean,
probably not.
yeah, you can't count on him coming back right now.
Yeah, I'm probably going to drop him because Tua's probably not going to come back.
Somebody will pick him up as soon as they can once they see you drop him, but
Yeah, they will.
Yeah, and they can have him because he'll come back and he'll probably get another concussion and be done for the season.
if he gets one more concussion, he just better quit.
Yes.
Yeah, and it was one thing, and it was for me. It was the thing like I'll take a chance on Tua because, what's the harm in it? Because
Yeah,
I do
I
have
did.
a backup.
I did. I took him in my other league. I took two. I'm like, listen, let's see what happens. And then once he got injured, I dropped him.
Yeah,
So
if
it's
I had been in fantasy football this year, Tua would have been no better than my number 2 quarterback.
but I did have a backup because I always take 2 quarterbacks. A lot of guys only
Yep.
take 1 quarterback
I think
anymore.
Sam Darnold.
I'll just pick
But,
up that one guy for the one bye week.
But I did take another backup quarterback just because I knew Tua had the possibility of getting hurt. Plus, there's the bye week, so I was just like, hey, safety measure. Put him in, and I can't even remember who the hell I have anymore. But of course, now this week, I think that quarterback was on a bye. So I'm like, oh, well, now I need a quarterback. Well, didn't one of the people want to trade me a quarterback, but they wanted 2 of my players for their quarterback, and they wanted to give me Justin Fields. I'm like, are you freaking shitting me? You want to give me Justin Fields? Out of all the quarterbacks you could trade, offer me. Somebody wants to offer me Justin Fields. And no
But
offense to
here's-
the quarterbacks, but Justin Fields is not the quarterback that you're going to trade me and I'm going to give you 2 players for. I'm sorry.
Who do they want on your team for Justin Fields?
Let me go check. I'll tell you.
Let me ask, was that Diaz who made that trade to you?
Duh. He offers me trades all the times.
Pat, this guy, listen, I don't know these guys, but dude, this is what, the third year? Third year I've been in the league with Jeremy and his nephew. There's a couple, Diaz is one of them. Nothing against them, but they offer some of the crazy ass mofo trays I have ever seen in my life. Like,
I always forget how to get the trades unless it's giving me like a mess. Oh, here we go, trade.
oh yeah, go to your,
So this was the trade. Where is it?
Anybody
Oh,
ever made the Ricky Williams trade? Or offered the Ricky Williams trade?
Oh, I'm sorry. He
No.
wanted 2 of my guys, and he was going to give me 2. So let me go into this trade.
You
So
know what
he
I
was
mean by
gonna
that,
give
right?
me.
I
Yeah.
mean by like when they offer you like his whole team for one guy in your team.
yeah. I did see the montage trailer for Ford Field. You will see that in this later on in the pay-per-view. I'm sorry, premium live event.
What is it
Where-
they're doing at Ford Field? That's SummerSlam next year?
Yeah, but
Because I know the Royal Rumble's at Lucas Oil Stadium.
I don't know if that was mentioned for like the little video package where it said coming soon. I think that might be part of a tag team that might be coming to WWE.
So
Oh
this was
yeah, AJ told me something about that where I was like, oh, I thought they were going to NXT.
They might go to main roster.
I think they should just go to main roster considering how old they are. It's like, okay, you want them learning the WWE style, whatever, but it's like your tag team
NXT is
division
not
could use a
there.
jolt.
Yeah.
They could give you one.
Go ahead, Jim.
So this was the trade offer I got. He was going to give me Ingram, a tight end from Jacksonville,
I was going to say, isn't Mark
Fields.
Ingram not an NFL player anymore? So thank you.
and Fields. I was like, okay, not terrible, but this is who he wanted. He wanted my tight end, Goddard, who's better,
No.
and Ayuka from San Francisco. San Francisco, my best receiver.
No.
I'm like,
Absolutely not.
you want to take those two guys from me, and give me shit? Like, are you
Wait.
kidding me?
Wait, who?
Be Ayuk. Or
Oh,
Ayuk.
okay. You said a Yuka, and I didn't know who you meant.
I accidentally added an A.
Yeah.
So that was
okay,
one of
no,
the
I
trades
know.
he
I know.
sent me.
Yeah, I got who you got now.
Here's another trade he offered me.
Hmm.
Now, once again, keep in mind, I did not need a wide receiver. Okay? He was going to offer me Ridley from Tennessee and Richardson from Indiana, the quarterback from Indiana. He wanted T. Bell. Once again, why am I giving up something and you're giving me something that I don't need?
And Richardson's been hurt twice already this year.
Yeah. And here was the first trade he sent me. Once again, sending me receivers. I didn't need receivers. Okay? Had plenty of receivers. That was one thing. I got plenty of receivers and plenty of running backs. Unfortunately, they all got freaking hurt. So that did not help me. But once again, he wanted to give me Ridley and Judy. And he wanted Mixon, my best running back. I'm like, you freaking crazy?
This is what your nephew offered me. He wanted Saquon Barkley from me
No. That's an instant no.
for the running back from Cleveland, Ford, who is probably going to see his minutes decline once Chubb comes back.
Yes.
And then Darnell Mooney, who has had a decent year. I looked at his stats. His fantasy points have been decent. But yeah, no. Because Mooney is he's starting off a good season, but he can fade pretty quick. I'm not losing consistency over somebody who's going to lose their minutes when Chubbs comes back or split time, and Mooney who's always been up and down. No bueno.
Hey,
I
Joe.
was like, decline.
Hey, Joe. I got a trade for you.
Oh boy.
You could have Malik Neighbors for this week only, and you can have and I'll take whatever you want to give me in return.
Okay. Wait, is there a game going on right now?
Oh yeah, there's one of the London games.
Oh shit. Minnesota and the Jets are playing right now.
I totally forgot about that.
Yes.
Minnesota's
obvi-
up 17-7. Come on, Sam Darnold. I need points from you. Fumbled loss isn't good.
Joe, you get why I said that, right?
Yeah.
Because Neighbors is out this week, meaning the Giants have no chance at beating the Seahawks in Seattle, which is usually a house of horrors for them.
Yeah, so the
Who's out?
quarterbacks in my
Malik Neighbors is out with a concussion this week.
Oh.
so
See, I screwed up when I picked. I needed to fill like I said, I needed to fill a quarterback position because Goff is on a bye, and I picked the wrong one because both Kirk Cousins and Daniel Jones were available, and I'm like, Seattle's not having a great season. I can pick up Daniel Jones. He should have a pretty decent game.
Seattle was undefeated until last week.
Yeah, but they're not playing great. It's not like they're dominating teams. They're giving up points. That's the thing. It's not about if they're winning. It's how many points are they giving up. If they're giving up points.
But the Giants can't score touchdowns.
So I was like, which guy do I pick up? I should have picked up Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins and the freaking Atlanta Falcons went off. Went off.
Dude, like I said, I'm a Giants fan, and if my choice was between Kirk Cousins and Daniel Jones, I'm taking Kirk Cousins without thinking twice.
So I fumbled and kicked the ball out of the end zone for a safety.
No. What you did was you were lined up for the opening kickoff, and instead of kicking it to the other team, you turned around and kicked it back through your own end zone.
Yeah, this week is challenging for me because I have a bunch of guys on bye, and then my two quarterbacks I have on my team are playing right now: Aaron Rodgers and Sam Darnold.
And they're both sucking it up right now.
Yes. So
Rodgers is 10 of 20 for 95 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, including one that was apparently returned. Darnold is 6 of 13 for 83 yards and been sacked 3 times. And Mullins got in the game to throw a pass. So did Darnold get hurt for a play or something?
Yeah, either way, that's not yeah. Oh boy, it's gonna be a day for me in fantasy. That's one team.
I'm
We'll
trying.
love.
I'm just trying to see how this game's going. Let's see. The Jets went 3-and-out on their first drive. Vikings' first drive was 11 plays, 52 yards. They settled for a field goal. Jets went 3-and-out. Vikings went 6 plays, 35 yards, and fumbled the ball at the Jets' 43-yard line. It was returned to the Vikings 42. But then after 3 plays, the Jets threw the pick six, which made it 10-0. Jets got the ball back again. He threw another interception. So the Vikings started the next drive at their own 43, but they got stopped on fourth down at the Jets 33. The Jets then took over, went 7 plays, 40 yards, and got stopped on a 4th and 2 at the Vikings 26. Dude, you got to kick the field goal there.
You know, it's another thing too. So speaking of fantasy, the other league that I am in is with coworkers, and we are doing best ball this year. And I actually kind of like it, to be honest. It's the first time ever doing best ball. If you don't know what that is, you draft your players and the system will put your best roster in based on projections. But then if somebody on your bench outperforms somebody in your starting lineup, they will swap them out. So it's best pretty much
I'd
it's
have
full,
0 wins if that was the case because there was one team that I played that their bench players, two of their bench players were really good. And it was their own fault for not putting them in. I would have put those guys in over the guys that the other person had. It's like they didn't pay attention to their who was going to be playing that day.
so it's definitely interesting. I'm in that league, I'm 3-1 right now. I just had my first loss and it was only by like 12 points. But yeah, it's interesting. So yeah, it's legitimately it puts the projected lineup for your best projected lineup as your starters, and if somebody outperforms a starter on your bench, it automatically swaps them out. So it's literally best ball. At the end of the day, whoever has the best stats gets put in your starting lineup, and that's how you roll. So I'm like, and I'm 3-1, and my team has scored the most points in fantasy. So I'm definitely rocking and rolling. It's interesting. Sorry, real quick, Jeremy. When you get to the end of the PLE, they do some interesting entrances for the folks. You know, Roman has his special entrance, and Cody seems to have his special entrance and things of that nature. So it's interesting they do that special entrances for a Bad Blood show.
Mm-hmm.
Well, nice though, pretty cool, I guess. Not gonna lie. All right then. Ooh.
So real quick, going back to this Jets Vikings game. So after the Jets got stopped on
Oh,
fourth
I
down in
missed that. She
Vikings
did the
territory,
Undertaker sit up.
the Vikings went on a 8-play, 74-yard drive, which resulted in a touchdown and them taking a 17-0 lead. On that drive, the Vikings were called for an illegal shift. A few plays later, the Jets got flagged for DPI for 18 yards. 2 plays after that, they got called for another DPI that gave the Vikings 11 yards. The Vikings then got called for another illegal formation on 1st and goal from the Jets 2. Then on 2nd and goal from the Jets 4, Gardner, who had been called for one of the DPIs, got called for defensive holding, which gave the Vikings 1st and goal at the 2 again, and then they scored the touchdown and made it 17-0. Then the two teams exchanged punts again. The Jets got set up with good field position after the one punt return and only had to go 31 yards to score the touchdown and cut it to 17-7. And then the Vikings ran 2 plays and the half ended. So looks like this has been a very sloppy game.
Yeah. I feel sometimes those European games just don't play out the way you would think they
No,
would.
the Giants have the one game in Munich against the Panthers later this year, but the times the Giants have played overseas in the past, I found the games were very difficult to watch.
So we play Carolina and Chicago this week. And then next week we fly out to London to play Jacksonville. And I think then we have a bye week.
Oh, Jacksonville, the redheaded stepchild of the NFL, gets to go to Europe a lot for football games.
Well, they were kind of like, weren't they really like the first team to be doing it because of like the connections between because of Chad Khan owning the the
European.
football team, and everything.
The
But
European football.
so funny you should mention the Jacksonville Jaguars, or Cougars, as longtime Giants radio announcer Dick Lynch used to always call them. But that was also because
Cougars.
Dick Lynch was usually about 3 sheets to the wind by kickoff time. Um,
Cougars. I love it.
So
I don't know why that one makes me laugh so much.
So before we started, I was listening to
That's
the
hilarious.
beginning of the most recent episode of The Experience, and they were reading an email sent in by a listener who says that he works for a pro sports team, though he wouldn't say what pro sports team, and he was giving what he said was an assessment of the way the league views, well, not just the league, because he didn't specify that he works for football, though I would have to imagine he probably does. But the way that like other pro sports organizations view the Jaguars as an organization, and the way that they view the Jaguars as an organization is basically as a joke. And of course, they were listing all the stuff like the Urban Meyer stuff that led to his firing, the guy who, stole all the money because he was gambling. And did you see that guy has filed a lawsuit against the sports books, saying that they were feeding his gambling addiction? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I don't care if there's like a genetic component to like having a predisposition to being like a gambling addict and shit like that. At some point, you got to have personal responsibility. You can't go suing the sports books for like encouraging your gambling when you were literally embezzling money from the team that you were. I hope that lawsuit gets thrown out pretty damn quickly. Honestly, but
It's everybody else's fault but mine.
yeah,
I didn't do it.
yeah.
They
It's
told
like
me
I
to do
remember, I
it.
remember exploding on my older sister at one point when she was like bitching about her job and saying that everybody was against her and everything, and I was just like, at one point, does it become your fucking responsibility for your performance or for the fact that you're not getting what you want out of it or blah 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 blah, you know? And we were doing this while we were out at dinner somewhere, so this was it was not pleasant. I just basically told her to fuck off and stormed out. Um, Luckily, it was at the end of the meal. But so anyway, they were saying that essentially they view the cons as more or less a joke, and specifically Tony Khan, and saying about how the NFL draft is a serious endeavor. And there's Tony Khan wearing the fake neck brace this year.
Oh yeah, playing the storyline from the wrestling.
Playing the
Yeah,
storyline that never went anywhere because he never really appeared on TV again after that. And just everything else. But they also said after they read through the email, like Brian Last looked up, Shad Khan's business history because he made all these monies off these like patents and everything. And he talked about how like he like first like incorporated this thing back in the late 70s and in the 80s. And then he mentioned about how like what and like whatever company it is that's like these that the patents like led to and everything. And I think he said in 2020 their reported sales. Now this is just sales, so it's a revenue, it's not profit or anything like that, but still, their sales were something like $8.5 billion.
Well, from what Shad Khan owns and what he
Yeah.
created, he's
Yeah,
a rich
from his
rich
business. So
dude.
that doesn't mean like any revenue or anything that was generated by any of the teams that he owns, or just like that business that it's all based on that allowed him to buy the teams. 2020, $8.5 billion in sales. There's
He's
no
a
way you're
smart
not turning.
guy.
There's yeah, I'm not criticizing him,
He's
specifically. But it's like there's no way you're doing $8.5 billion in sales and you're not turning a pretty good profit. Your expenses can't be that much.
not for those type of
Yeah.
not for that business model.
Yeah. So it just further reinforced the fact that, and I was never, because with AEW getting their TV deal, great, good for them. Good for them. Don't know if it's going to mean that company is going to actually be profitable now. My guess is that it still probably won't be because Tony Khan spends money like a drunken sailor. And when he's got a pipeline that provides that much money, obviously he doesn't have to fucking care unless his dad tells him to start caring, which it doesn't seem like he's doing because I think he would have by now 5 years into it. So I was never one of those AEWs going out of business people. I only ever said AEW will be around as long as a network wants to give them television time. and the network still obviously wants to give him television time, so they'll still be around.
Yeah.
So AEW's ratings can suck for the next 3 years or whatever the hell it was. I think it said it was a 3-year deal, and Warner Brothers has an option for a fourth. So it's not until the end of the third year of this deal that it's going to start now that you're really going to need to start caring about the ratings anymore. See how the landscape may have shifted one way or t'other before you really have to spend time worrying about, is AEW going to survive? Because
Yeah.
again, we know that Shad will seemingly prop it up for as long as he's willing to, and if he's willing to, when he's got that much money, power to him.
The other thing,
I wish I could be that rich, like the guy who spent $4,000 on a Taylor Swift guitar just to smash it. Spoiler alert: it wasn't a real Taylor Swift guitar, nor is it actually autographed by her. Dumbass. But yeah, but again, everybody says that the Jaguars are essentially run like a joke. So at some point, you have to point the finger of blame at the ownership for that. So Shad doesn't seem like he's hiring the best people to run that team.
Hmm.
And if Tony's spending this much time on his little wrestling project,
how much time is he taking care of the Jags?
right? Because you're saying about, well, this is one of the things that the guy said in the email too. He was criticizing the Jaguars for drastically overpaying some of the free agents that they've brought into the last few years, which then, of course, goes and resets the market for the remaining 31 teams. And I guess the guy, after he said that, added in the phrase, sound familiar? Because what we've seen, like recently, the word about like the contract that Swerve just signed, and there was the report that WWE wasn't happy about it because it's like you're raising the bar and everything. Personally, though, I'm not going to cry too much for WWE if they have to
No.
spend a little more on the wrestlers because they've got plenty of money right now too.
Yeah, they do. They do.
Yeah.
So I'm not really going to cry. Yeah, it's going to probably get out of hand, unfortunately, and at some point it will crash, I'm sure. But I'm not really going to like shed a tear for WWE. I see their point, but I'm not going to give a fuck. You know what I mean? So, but no, I just found it interesting that yeah, it's like other people that are out there that are in like the real sports leagues seem to view the Jaguars organization and the people that are running it as jokes because people are running it. I mean, Shad's the owner. Obviously, there's a general manager and stuff, but again, Tony's spending this much time single-handedly booking a wrestling company that's got 3 weekly shows, even though one of them might be going away with this new deal.
I think that it is going to go
It
away.
sounds like Rampage is going to be gone, but there's all this talk about getting a new show on FS1 or whatever, which so it's like,
They're also going to be streaming on Max.
well,
Yes.
yes and no.
Pay-per-views will be discounted, but the shows will be streaming simultaneously when they're live, and then
Right,
previous
but it's like
shows will be listed
the
on.
archive won't get there for a few more months, it said, which is disappointing.
I mean, it's
But
that's
also,
I
like,
like
again,
the fact that for me, because I don't have a tendency to watch them live, that I can go on to Max at any given time and watch the previous show.
oh yeah, that's fine.
That's what's good for me.
Yeah,
it'll be live, and then
I
the next
agree.
day you'll be able to watch it, or several hours after it's live, you'll be able to watch the replay. So
I agree, but again, it's regarding the pay-per-views. So you have to have the Max membership, which if you're watching other stuff on Max, fine. Then obviously, great. But then you're only getting a discounted price on the pay-per-view, so you still have to pay for the pay-per-view. Whereas if you're subscribing to Peacock, you can watch all the WWE PLEs, no extra charge.
yes,
Well,
but at the same
they need to make
aspect,
money somewhere
I
because they're not making it on their ratings.
well, I did read
Well,
though
it's
that
just
when
that.
WWE went to that model, they did lose a lot of money, which they had to make up in other areas. And I don't think, but they were able to absorb that because of where they were. I don't think AEW is going to be able to absorb losing all that money on pay-per-views by just having them be streamed on Max with a standard membership or even the higher
Well, yeah,
tiered membership.
because they can't at this point in time. They're not going into arenas like WWE's and selling them out. They're not going into 15,000 seat arenas and selling them out.
AEW sell out an arena.
So if they were doing that on a consistent basis, they might have been able to absorb the cost of that because now they're bringing money from they got a lot more income from their shows on a weekly
Yeah, I mean,
basis.
even when they go to Max for the pay-per-views, they're still going to be available on the payperview.com and they're still going to be available on your local cable network if you go to your I
Right.
go to my Spectrum thing and still order it for the standard price. So they'll still make some money off of that. I'm just curious to see what the discounted price is. If it's half price, I'm okay with half price, $25, $20. Okay. I wouldn't be so hard up to spend $20 or 25, but the 50 is far and few between. That's kind of something like no one really wants to specifically do. I mean, UFC has their own model too. That's a little pricey, but you get more out of it with them than you do with wrestling per se.
Remember back in the
So
day when we all used to chip in for the cost of it to watch the WWE ones when they were on pay-per-view?
I
I
used to
have
remember
no
when I
idea what
had a
you're
cheater
talking about.
box and then have to pay for shit and just watch everything when I wanted to.
We all get together at our friend's house and watch them together, and we'd all chip in like $3, $4, maybe five, depending on how many people were coming over.
Well,
That
one
was
thing
fun to
that
do that.
one thing that I also wonder then, let's just say I'm just going to throw out this number, which of course is completely arbitrary and just off the top of my head. Let's say that they sell the discounted rate that they sell the pay-per-views for on Max is $20. Okay. How much of that $20 does AEW get? How much does does Warner Brothers keep?
Yeah,
If it's
of
not the
course.
full, if it's not the full $20, then again, I'm not really sure how they're making money there. So yeah, it's just this is the problem too. AEW is not a publicly traded company,
Who would buy
so
stock in it? No. Sorry.
well,
There would be people.
it's not about buying stock. It's that they don't have to present their books to anybody then.
Yes.
I
So
know.
all we can ever do is guess and speculate using estimates and best guesses. So that's why I'm saying I don't think that they're going to turn a profit even with this deal because I have a feeling that Tony's just going to spend more. Like I'm sure he's going to make a huge offer to Kevin Owens when he's a free agent. That's
I
probably worth more than Kevin Owens is worth at this point in his career.
he
But he'll
he'll s-
do it.
I think he'll stay at WWE at the end of the day.
I think he's gone. I think he's probably coming to the conclusion he's gone as far as he can in WWE. He's not going to be a world champion again.
The, the other
He'll go work with his buddies, the Bucks, which I just don't get why they're friends. Everything I've read about them in terms of their personal lives, they seem very different. So I'm not really sure why he's friends with those guys, but whatever. Um, I don't know. I think he'll go to AEW because I think he'll look at it for him. I mean, he's pushing 40 now too. He'll go there and take Tony Khan's very generous money because he'll look at it the same way that I think all these other older WWE guys that went to AEW looked at it, a retirement plan. I think the guys like Jericho and Edge and Christian and Danielson and not so much Moxley, but the first four guys I mentioned definitely, and then also the guys like Mark Henry and Big Show, even though Mark Henry's not with the company anymore. I think they all probably looked at it as a way to make sure that they had money that they could stash away, for when their career was fully well and over. So
Is a wrestler's career ever really over?
at some point, yes, it is finally. Now, obviously, Jericho is trying to prove that a wrestler's career never ends. Ric Flair, of course, did too. Sting to a certain extent. Um, but again, I just think that they all just look at it as a way to make sure that they have some money for when they really definitely can't get back in the ring or whatever. So, power to them.
Yes.
Power to them. I'm glad they'll get paid. I'm glad they'll get money. Hopefully they will be set where they won't have to become one of those old. Because again, how sad is it when we see guys that we watched in the 80s and the 90s basically having to continue to make a living by essentially hustling, by going to like every convention and autograph show and charging $20, $30, $50, $100 for autographs, and that's the only way that they can make money in their later days,
It's sad.
because they weren't smart enough to put away money or they didn't make enough to put away money or just the fact that they were independent contractors and didn't get benefits like, health insurance and 401ks and shit like that. So
Well,
So I won't blame Kevin Owens for taking Tony Khan's money when I believe he will.
The other thing too is I know WB is taking care of like a lot of the advertisements and all that stuff, like marketing and all that. So Tony doesn't seem to have to delve too much money into that, I don't believe. So it's
Well, that'll definitely help because on two levels. One, because Tony would probably overpay, and two, because I don't know if he would do it right. I mean, how many ads for AEW do you ever actually see too? You know,
mhm.
I see very few.
Oh man.
I
I
know it's
have
hard to
to.
get I know it's hard to get advertising on television, especially this time of year, especially this year being what this year is.
Ugh. If I see one more damn freaking ugh,
Jeremy,
so sick of them.
Jeremy, you still got 29 days.
I know.
You're gonna see a ton
Of
more yet.
torture. Of
Yes.
absolute torture.
Real quick, I
And
want
you know
to
what? It
interrupt
doesn't
you
matter that the
guys.
election's only 29 days away, or actually no, 30 days away. You're still gonna see a ton because they always keep running them for like at least a couple days after election day.
And you can't get away from it anywhere. It's
Nope.
on
No, I see.
Pandora. It's on
I swear to
everything. I'm like,
God,
oh my God.
I swear to God, last night between watching the Yankees game, which was on TBS, and whatever college football game I put on, and so like didn't matter if it was on NBC, CBS, ABC, ESPN. I swear to God, every commercial break it was at least three political ads. And
Susan Wild. I'm like, oh my God, shut up about Susan Wild.
they all suck. I mean, especially the negative ones. The positive ones are a little less annoying, but they're still annoying. You know,
Um,
at least they have a positive message, but you know, it's like they're still just like, yeah, okay, I've seen this ad 53 times already.
I want to interrupt for a quick second.
No, we're talking political ads. This is very important stuff.
This is more this is better. So I had mentioned to you guys the other week. I'm a little behind, so I apologize. But to our fans, I have found a program that has been advertised a lot for making clips of our wonderful podcast that we share to you guys every week. And I'm just, as we're doing this podcast, I threw, excuse me, one of the videos in here to pull clips so I can post on Facebook and YouTube and whatnot. And one of them, and it gives you, it's cool. It gives you like a rating out of like 100 of how they think this clip will do, and it gives you like, so this one clip is at 89 out of 100. The hook is A minus, the flow a B, value B, trend A minus. But it tags, it gives them titles and navigating family humor in middle-aged guys gatherings. Hilarious misunderstandings. Target Dewey Cox and Dick Insider. I'm excited to I'm excited to put these clips on. Oh, disrespect in sports. Oh, meet J.M. Miller, the guy named after breakfast. I'm just laughing my butt off here. Will the cider hold on? I can't stop. Will the cider be liquid gold or just a disappointment? That one, 84 out of 100. I'm posting that one because that I don't care what it says. That's just awesome to me. I'm sweating because I'm laughing so hard. This is funny. Um, yeah, yeah. These clips are gonna be fun. Yeah. Hilarious Zoom fails and video discoveries with friends. I think this had to do with the beginning of the show when we had some technical difficulty or something happened, but I'm going to post that one because I don't remember what that one's about, but I'm just going to have fun with this. So, fans, just to let you know, you're going to be seeing crazy clips that I'm going to post. So, we're going to have some fun. There we go. All right. Continue on. I'm sorry. Just wanted to throw that out there. Found it humorous. I'm laughing. Get a little sweaty in here. Whew.
So I
Got
want
my
to
heart beat
take
up.
it back to wrestling because we talked about the first 3 episodes and I got to watch the next 3
Yes.
of Mr. McMahon.
Dun, dun,
And
dun.
I'll tell you what, it was quite interesting. His take on concussions is they are not real. They're made up. Even after having scientific evidence brought to him by one of his former wrestlers who went and got their doctorate in,
Yeah.
in neuroscience and stuff like that, he still believes they're fake.
But he did it for the
Um,
cause to, be on the cusp of, you know, being in the now and making sure his wrestlers are safe, no matter if he believes in it or not.
and he wants to take no responsibility, and I can understand to a point with this. He wanted to take no responsibility for these guys having drug addictions and problems like that. They're grown men. Uh, he evidently has no idea how to deal with with mental illness because he just pushes his away and down and out. And I
Yeah.
think that's why he has. Let me rephrase that. I think that's one of the reasons that the stuff that has come out against him has come out is because of things that probably happened to him in his past that he had no idea how to deal with or wanted to deal with. So therefore, he took it out in the type of behaviors that he engaged in. Um,
Yes.
Well, we know how he wanted to deal with it. He just never could. He always said he wanted to kill his stepfather.
so, um, but it's one of those things. There's been a lot of studies done by a lot of smarter people than me that have linked past traumas to behaviors
Yeah.
that people have that they have as adults and even teenage kids, some of the behaviors that they exhibit supposedly. um,
Yeah, I think it's
if you watch that McMahon, the 6 episodes, at some point in time I think they make reference to possibly his mother like doing stuff to him too.
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
That was kind of brought up. I was like, oof.
and it was very brief. It was like 2 minutes, and then it was never mentioned again.
Yeah.
Where the stepfather thing was mentioned a couple times throughout the thing by different various wrestlers, as well as like some of the people that were writers and stuff like that. But it's so I'm not really 100% surprised by the fact of he thinks people are weak, essentially, was my take on it, and that if they're addicted to drugs, they're pretty much weak because he never got addicted to drugs. He never had those kind of problems. Right, you never had those kind of problems. You had different deviant problems that now you're paying the price for with big problems.
yeah.
Yeah.
And like you were saying, I mean, I think it's been pretty well established. I think it's accepted by most everybody, like in the scientific community, that people who get abused have a high tendency to become abusers when they're older, you know.
Hmm.
The other aspect of the last three too was like they kind of dive more in the relationship between Vince and Shane. And I
Yes.
feel like he didn't learn, like, I don't want to say he didn't learn, but he didn't try to correct any mistakes his dad did with his relationship
No,
regarding
he
him and his
redid. He
son.
just did him again.
Yeah, he just like it's like he just rehashed the way his father treated him. He did the same thing to Shane in regards to that. I feel like it was just a
Yeah.
rehash of
It,
the same thing. Just
right. But
you
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 can.
you could definitely tell the emotion in Shane. Like, I think he wanted more stamp of approval from Vince than what he
Right.
really got at the end of
And I
the
mean, we
day.
don't know how Shane is with his kids. I would hope that he's breaking that cycle.
It sounds like Shane's a very good father.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's
We would
It
hope
sounds
definitely
that
like
he's
not.
breaking that cycle.
it sounds like Shane is more than willing to hug his kids.
Yeah,
Yes.
Shane definitely seems like he's doesn't want his kids to experience what he did growing up as well.
Yeah,
So
it's one of the things that as you get to the end, I don't really consider this much of a spoiler, but it really does make you wonder, since like all the interviews conducted with these people also happened before the allegations really started coming out. What exactly is Vince's relationship with all these people today? What is his relationship with Linda? What is his relationship with Shane, with Stephanie, with Triple H? How much do Shane and Stephanie and Triple H let him see his grandkids now?
Yeah. It was very interesting. The last three, just because of what they dive into and what they talk about. Like you said, the relationship with Shane, how he's always felt like he had to seek his father's approval. He finally got it after that Hell in the Cell match where he jumped off the cell, top of the cell against the Undertaker, and like finally got that hug. And it's like that's
But
kind
it
of
took
sad.
that
Yeah,
moment
Yeah, it
it's
took
to
sad that
get
that's
that
what
that.
was
it
killing
took to
himself.
get it.
Like
Yeah.
it's just and then of course you go to the final episode, which is right after that's where they're kind of wrapping up, and like they preface it with this is after the allegations have now finally dropped, and of course they're bringing back Pritchard and all those people for sit downs, and you can tell
Well,
there's been a time lapse, and I think they even
Pritchard,
make it.
Pritchard, I think was the only one that had an interview snippet aired post allegation. I think everybody else that was still there, I think it was still from before the allegations came out because I think they kept putting the dates up on the
Oh yeah,
screen
you're
at
right, they
that
were,
point.
yes,
So I
but
think
it was.
I think Pritchard was the only one who was interviewed post allegation that made the cut. And it was like, they said, like, well, what'd you think of the rough cut you saw? He's like, I hated it. I thought it was terrible. I thought it was a gotcha. I thought it was a hit
Yeah,
piece.
I thought it was a gotcha piece. Like, of course, Pritchard would say that.
Right,
Like,
of course, because he is and always has been. As much as I like Pritchard as a storyteller and everything, and he is a fountain of information. He's been there for so long. Yeah, he is still always going to be Vince's stooge and everything.
yes,
And like Cornette and Last, they did a fucking, I think it was like 5.5 hours, 6 hour podcast reviewing the whole thing because they reviewed each episode.
right, right.
But at the end, they just were saying, how was it a hit piece? How was it a gotcha piece? It was his words.
Yeah. Now, yeah, you can edit things to make them look worse, but if they're asking him a question and he's giving an answer, it's not a gotcha piece in regards to how he answered. That is his words coming out of his mouth and him explaining things the way he feels about them.
Well, Richard probably thought it was a gotcha piece because of how much Meltzer was on it, because he hates Meltzer, which I mean, I get. But I thought Meltzer was fine in this. I really didn't find anything that Meltzer said to be
No, he was a
like wrong
Yeah,
or
I
like
was
controversial.
able to handle Meltzer this time.
yeah.
Yeah.
Meltzer
Well,
explained things the way that any writer would, based on his experience as a fan of wrestling, as well as somebody who was probably backstage for some of these things that happened because of his access to the WWE at that point in time.
Yeah.
He
Richard-
was
so-
there when he went on. Was it what?
Donahue.
He was there.
Yeah,
Donahue. He
Meltzer was sitting right
fucking
next to
there.
Vince
On Donahue. That's a crazy
with
part.
that fucking mullet that Meltzer was.
Oh
sporting
my
at
god,
the
it was
time.
terrible.
But
I
yeah,
laughed
so,
when I
so
saw the
Pritchard probably
mullet.
thinks it was a Pritchard probably thinks it was a hit piece because Meltzer was on it, because Phil Muchnick was on it, and I don't like Phil Muchnick either.
No, that
Because
guy
I
kind of
always
seemed
felt
like an
that
asshole.
I've always felt that his coverage of wrestling has always been just fuck wrestling. I wish it didn't exist. And I think he tried to contend that he cared about the guys that like Vince was exploiting. I'm like, bullshit. No, you fucking didn't. You were practically gleeful when Brian Pillman died. I remember Cornette's commentary that aired on Raw after in response to Muchnick writing about Pillman's death. Cornette was so pissed. If you ever go look that one up on YouTube, I'm pretty sure you can find it. But it's like I couldn't really disagree with much of anything that Muchnick was saying during the documentary, but it's like, yeah, but you're still a fucking asshole too. You never cared about the wrestlers. You just
That title's horrible.
You were pretty much the newspaper wing of the Parents Television Council wanting it to get thrown off the air. So fuck you. But so Pritchard probably thought it was abuse because Meltzer was on it, Muchnick was on it, the Shoemaker guy, who's like the in-house wrestling historian for Bill Simmons, even though most people think he's a nincompoop. So that's why Pritchard probably thought it was a hit piece. But dude, it's like it wasn't a hit piece. And obviously, one thing that's interesting that they don't really get into because there was no point, obviously. So they had one more round of interviews scheduled with Vince. Then the allegations came out. Then Vince canceled the last interview.
Yeah.
Understandably so, because that's obviously all they were going to ask him about at that point. And if he said anything, it would potentially put him in liability.
Yes.
But it makes me wonder then. So what were they going to ask him before the allegations came out? Like, what else were they possibly going to go over at that point?
Yeah, I think it would have been, based
I'm
on
glad
what
I didn't
has
see this
been
spoiler
recorded,
coming.
what do you have anything you would like to maybe clear up that maybe been misrepresented or
Yeah, maybe they
misunderstood?
would have aired him
Serious,
maybe they would
seriously
have aired
now.
him like the beginning of like a rough cut and said, "Do you want to respond to anything as far as the way we're putting this together?" Maybe, hard to say.
Okay, they just threw out a lot of shit at the end of this pay-per-view, Jeremy.
All right.
A
So
lot.
I would say that is a good stopping point. Would you guys agree?
Yeah, that's fine.
Well,
That works.
so you've seen all of the McMahon documentary now?
Yes. Yep, I've
Okay.
seen it all.
My wrap up for it would be it would probably be better if you were somebody who didn't know the history going in.
I am one of those people that knows some of the history but doesn't know all the history. So there was a
Yeah.
lot of eye-opening moments in regards to the history that I didn't know about.
Yeah. Like there were still plenty of moments for me that made me go, mostly when Vince was like, "Well, even if it was rape, the statute of limitations was
Yeah,
expired."
I was like,
And
what?
and Austin being all like, "Yeah, I don't believe CTE is real." It's like, no, it's
Yeah, him
fucking
too.
real, you idiot.
Austin with the
When he
CTE, not
started
real
saying that,
too.
I think I posted a comment because I think Cage Side Seats did like an own separate article about Austin's comments about CTE. I think I posted a thing on the comments of that article saying just when I was beginning to like him again. But yeah, I think it works. I think that the whole documentary works better if you're somebody who doesn't know the breadth of the history that they covered. If you're somebody like me, and I think probably Joe, who knows most everything that they talked about in that, it doesn't work quite as well. It's still worth watching, but if you know the history of WWE, just say like WrestleMania to present, WrestleMania 1 to present, you're going to know most
Excuse
of the
me.
stuff that they talk about in it. So,
My son is playing with balloons in the background suddenly, so if you hear any farty sound noises, that's not me.
yes, I did just hear a sound. I wondered what
I
it
don't
was.
know if that's legitimate or not, Jeremy. We know how you are.
I
Well, you
wondered
missed
what
the
it
balloon that flew.
was. I wondered what it was, but I was willing to let it go by. Now I've heard it multiple times, so yeah, I think this is probably the good place to end this.
Yeah.
So I wanted to bring up this point because you're talking about Austin. It was funny to hear the Undertaker too, because the Undertaker, not that he didn't believe concussions were real, but he's like, I don't think I ever remember having a concussion before. And then he talks about WrestleMania where he did have a concussion.
Yeah, the Brock
you don't-
match where he lost.
Yeah. But there was also an interesting point about that too, is that I was always under the impression that the Undertaker made a decision during that match that he was going to drop the title. Not the title. He was going to lose to Brock at that WrestleMania. Like that was an in-ring decision. Evidently, I was misinformed or misunderstood the situation because evidently Vince came to him that like earlier and said, "You're going to lose tonight. Like we're giving Brock the win tonight." And which the Undertaker was not happy about. He did not want that streak to end. But as you know, you don't really have much of a say when Vince says you're doing this, and that was the final time. So it's interesting that that's how that went down, and not where the Undertaker was like, "Yes, let's do." Let me. I'm gonna have you win. You're gonna go over tonight, and you're gonna be the guy that breaks the streak. So that was interesting to me.
Yeah, and so then like Vince said, I don't think Undertaker had a concussion in that match. I think he was just in shock from the fact
Yeah,
that he lost.
that's yeah. He was
Yeah,
just in
because
shock.
I'm just shocked I lost.
Yeah, he had to
Hence,
go.
I had a
He
concussion because
had
I
to
was
go
so
to the
shocked.
hospital, and you accompanied him to the hospital because he was in shock.
And then consoling his wife. What does consoling his wife mean? Like, what were you doing, Vince? Like, we know you're pervy. It's like, how were you consoling? And you can
Now,
see Undertaker's face when he
what
said
were you
consoling.
doing to poor Michelle?
Like, and you can see the Undertaker's face when he's saying he was consoling my wife. Like, he didn't look happy that that was being done. So, and we'll leave it like that. That's an interesting thought for everybody to kind of can think about, especially if you go watch the documentary that is on Netflix, Mr. McMahon. So,
Ponder that thought if you dare.
yes. So, we'll just thank everybody for watching. As Joe mentioned, he's going to have some clips up there. I'm interested to see what those clips look like. We hope you enjoyed the show, as always. And as my son makes a ton of noise in the background, I'm going to kick him in the booty for doing all this. But he's been patiently waiting for us to be done, so I can appreciate that. But we thank you all. We appreciate you all. Keep tuning in. We'll keep coming back with more content and hopefully making you laugh. And there he is. And with that said, thank you, and we hope you finished with us.